Record in. Oh, there is no countdown. It just starts recording. Hey guys, welcome to the Raw Barbell Club podcast from the heart of the Hawkesbury, your place for strength. You have your hosts Luke Reynolds, Andy Rajivan, as well as Ash Jones. Today we're joined by Alana Curnow. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Curno's right. Well, it's
Oh,
Campbell now, but I mean,
Cam,
Strong Woman
Cam,
Times was Curnow, so
it's Campbell Nee Kerner.
yes.
Luke's going to give us a little bit of an introduction for Alana, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Alana. It's really good to have you on. It's funny, of all the podcasts we've sort of ever recorded or done, I was sort of thinking the other day, I'm like, fuck, we've never actually done Alana, and it's such an obvious one. I think you're
So
possibly
rude.
too close to me that it never really clicked. I'm like, before she was Coach Alana, which a lot of people know you as now, people didn't realize that you're actually one of the real trailblazers and probably one of the most capped Australian strong women ever. And I think it's high time we sort of covered off on your career and really show people, especially, you know, what people are like in strongman. If they joined 2 years ago, they think they invented the sport. So they don't realize that everybody came before them and there's a great history there. So I'm just going to give a brief rundown on your career and we'll get into it.
Sure.
So guys, Alana Curnow, as she was known, she's now Campbell, married Shane, also a very good athlete. And we may even have him on at some point, which would be pretty cool because he's a multi-sport athlete as well. But yeah, Alana, I met her, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So she was one of the real trailblazers for Australian strongwoman, especially in the lighter categories. Alana mainly competed as an under 75 and an under 82, which is basically middleweight class. And it was, you were kind of punching above your weight there because it's obviously, even in the women's, it's often a sport dominated by heavies. And so you really blazed the trail there. And you were 2 times Australasia's most powerful woman. You were Australia's strongest woman, 2 times Gold Coast strongest woman. You competed in Ohio at the Arnold Classic, the original Arnold Classic, which was effectively the World Championships, especially for women at the time, and finished top 10 twice there, which was a phenomenal thing at the time for Australian athletes, male or female, to be really cracking those top 10 lineups internationally. And then you had a brief hiatus, which we'll go over all of this in depth, and then returned in 2019 for one last hurrah and took out the ultimate title of Southern Hemisphere's strongest woman, and then promptly retired, which I was quite sad about. But I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep working on you and get you back.
Maybe. Maybe.
Weightlifting.
No. Doesn't that
And
require
then,
like mobility and no?
And then, and like probably one of the crowning achievements was you broke the all-time world record in the Atlas stone lift for women, a world record, not just a national record, and really helped push that number up. It's gone astronomical now with athletes like, you know, Andrea Thompson and your Donna Moores and stuff, who are just super freaks. But at the time, yeah, 138.8 kg, 2015, I think, and that was at the Brisbane Fit Expo under Wells.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I did it. I weighed in at under 82 as well.
Well, that's it. I mean, everybody who's broken the record since is a titan. They're definitely heavies, and they're much larger women. So yeah, back then, like I said, you really broke the mold for the lighter weight women. So awesome. That's Alana in a little tiny nutshell. Let's go in depth. Who wants to lead off?
I have a question. Why strong women? How did you get into it?
I was looking for a way to lose weight after having my son, and one of my friends dragged my ex-partner into it, and I was like, oh, all right, I'll go have a quick look at it. I started training, and because there's a lot of awkward carries, and growing up on a farm and equestrian and carrying hay bales, it was just something that I was automatically not shit at. So it was an enjoyable way to exercise, just lifting awkward implements, and then I realized that people competed in that and kind of took it from there because I just really enjoyed it.
How soon after like starting to just train did you decide that you wanted to just compete, and then how soon after that were you like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this, I should pursue it?
I think it was about 6 or 7, like I'd only been training it for about a month, and I was like, no, I want to do this will be fun. And I had 6 months to train for, I think it was like BOR Strongest Man or something that was local, which I was on track for, and the event got cancelled. And I was like, well, I'm just doing the next one. What's the next one? And the next one was the Nationals at in Brisbane, which was open to anyone at that point. I think I competed at under 74. And I was like, well, all right, let's give it a go. Tried to prep for that. I bought some equipment, like the worst yoke you've ever seen, like small and rickety and not something you should be carrying large amounts of weight on.
It can't be worse than our SMAI one.
I don't know. And then I also used to train up and down my gravel driveway, which was uneven and terrible, and was completely deflated by the fact that I could barely move the given weight like 2 meters. But I just, I stuck to it because I wanted to compete, and I had already prepped for some of it. So I was like, stuff it and doing the next one. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being a really good day, like under a good yoke on a gym floor. I carried the whole 10 meters. I think I ended up placing third. But that was the time I met Lee Hollenkeen and her family. So Lee Hollenkeen won that competition. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that was at a national level, and everyone was so lovely and helpful, and just kind of got a bit hooked on a couple of the personalities, some people that I really loved. So just kept going.
It's that's a really good sort of background, really, isn't it? I mean, growing up on a farm and all that sort of manual type stuff and carries, it really is the essence of what a lot of the stuff we do in Strongman is. It's a lot of the origins of what we do. Farmers carry, for fuck's sake. Like, a lot of what we do is actually agricultural based or historically based feats on the land. So it's unsurprising that you sort of found a natural fit shifting across into Strongwoman, which at the time, to be fair, what are we talking, 2013, 2012, thereabouts?
2013. Yep.
Yeah, so that's when Strongwoman was on the heels of girls like Lee Hollenkeen and her mum Susan, rest in peace. And a few of those early girls, Sue Meddy Metcalf, girls like that were really starting to push.
Rachel Mckenzie.
Yeah, right. Like
Rachel was one of those personalities. Like, she definitely got me hooked on Strongman. She was just so amazing and so positive and just so helpful all the time. And you can tell some of the people that have never competed against Rachel Mckenzie just because of the way she was. She was a hard-ass competitor, but she was also just fabulous to be around.
Awesome.
She's gone to America.
And same with Sue. Sue's moved over there.
Yeah. Never met Sue, but I've spoken to Sue a few times. She's lovely. She was really helpful with the stone.
Yeah, she is a cool chick, Sue. And they're really doing some good stuff still over there now, even. But yeah, it's funny. A lot of those personalities are the things you kind of remember when you think back a lot into the early days. And there was a lot of sort of up and down and politics and crap that I've spoken about before in different podcasts and try to avoid now. But there were still some really great people and some great personalities that came through in that period. And Strongwoman in Australia was sort of about 5 years behind the resurgence of Strongman, which seems to be fairly typical, I guess, in strength sports. But yeah, you really came through in a period when it was really starting to grow again. It was actually a good time to get on board.
It was.
That 2011, 2012 times seems to be when sort of CrossFit started getting super popular too. So it seems like that is the best time in a sense to start getting competitive in these sports, because
and if I'd chosen CrossFit, I probably would have had so much more money.
Yeah, look, that's on you.
I haven't ruled out a shift to CrossFit even now at 36 years old.
But even so, like if we look at some of those earlier CrossFit games around that time period, a lot of the events you could almost say were modeled off what was done back in the 80s with Strongman, because they had these absolutely. You have to like push with a hammer and like hit a block a certain distance. You've got to feel like, I was watching old World's Strongest Man where they were just like shoveling gravel or rocks into a wheelbarrow, and then they had to run with the wheelbarrow.
Yeah, that's really nice stuff.
Some of them are interesting, but
I just needed some like contract work, like construction work done. He's like, well, why don't we just get some strong guys down here? We'll just give one of them the prize money once it's done. I need some fridges moved and I need some gravel moved. Let's just get it done.
Yeah, like our regular, like we have a budget for, you know, $10,000 as our salary, and we're just gonna put that all to one person rather than paying everyone.
Yeah, we don't have to pay every contractor. We just make it a competition, and the best contractor wins. So,
oh gosh.
Were there any like you talked about some of these strong women that sort of shepherded you into the sport? Were there any strong women that you really saw as, you know, your goalpost when you first came into the scene?
Rachel Mckenzie was one. I think for the first part, was that loud for you guys?
No,
or I think
I can't even hear it.
Cool, that's fine. Yeah, one of the last competitions I did with her, I finally beat her. That was a huge goalpost mark for me. And then also Alana Casey, so the American middleweight. The first time I went to Ohio, she won. And I think I came 9th or 10th, and she was just incredible. She's a phenomenal athlete. Yeah, my goal was to, whatever happens, just to get closer to her. So the next year, this whole new breed of middleweight women came in as well. But we'd all gotten better, we'd all improved, and she placed 7th and I placed 8th. So I was really happy with closing that gap, because she was a big, she was a big one that I wanted to chase down, just because I admired everything that she did so much. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was sort of me with Craig Reed when I started. He was such a mentor and I've been such a phenomenal athlete for so long. And I eventually managed to beat him once or twice. And that was, it might not mean shit to anyone else, but it was such a thing for me because he was a guy I'd always looked up to.
It's a good feeling.
early on was just absolutely crushing me. And so I watched everything he did and tried to learn and emulate him, even the way he carried himself at competitions and the way he interacted with crowds. And I wanted to be him so badly. And he's still a great friend and mentor to me now. But when I finally beat him, I was like, nobody else gave a shit. I was just like, holy shit, this is like, I don't know what I do from now on. This is a high watermark in my career. So it's no,
100%. That's Rachel for me. Yeah, definitely. So beating her was just like a yes, finally.
Hell yeah. So Arnold, Ohio. I've never done the Ohio Arnold. Obviously, I've done a few of the legs around the world and that, but obviously Ohio is the granddaddy of it all. Let's talk about that. What was that experience like? How did you get there? How did you qualify? And what happened?
Okay. So the first time, my qualifier, it was on the Sunshine Coast, actually, the qualifier. And I didn't make weight. I think it was supposed to be under 73. And there was like a little bit of a mix up with the weights and the weigh-ins, and they had actually posted the wrong weight. I think they were posted under 72, which I definitely wasn't getting to. And the required weight was under 73. And then when it was questioned, it was put to some of the other competitors whether they were happy to bring the weight to what it was supposed to be, which they declined. So unfortunately for me, I then got out of the sauna and had my dinner and everything else, and then was still told to just weigh in as light as possible anyway. I was like, all right, well, go throw up my food. And it was disgusting. So I weighed in, and I still had to compete in the open weight class and placed second behind Rachel Mckenzie. And then they released the new women's, the under 82, maybe a few weeks after that competition. So then I got an invite to compete at Arnold's at under 82. So
yeah, because that the weight classes changed, didn't they? They were in the women's.
Yeah, because it used to be just under 73 and then opens.
Yeah.
So it used to just be under 73 and then opens, and it's like, well, Jesus, all right. So here's me at 75 kilos, and like I had no idea how to cut weight then either, like none. Yeah. I'm like trying to cut 3 kilos, and I'm like, oh, I could do that in a couple of days now. But that was a great event, and it was fun. Like was disappointed to not do the weights that I had trained, but it was also fun to really just push myself, hard against Rachel, and I think there's a couple of other girls there. But yeah, to get the invite was awesome because my partner at the time had also been invited, so we're heading over there anyway.
Yeah.
So to be able to go there and compete, it was incredible, and the whole. I hope Arnold's Ohio can go back to how it was after everything that's happened, because it is amazing. It is the best experience. It's huge. There's just people, like just everyone that you recognize, like fitness wise, celebrity wise, just there. And the fun thing was, like, they would love to come out into where the amateur strongman hang out. So you get all the pro strongman, you get UFC fighters coming through, and just everyone just coming and checking it out, and you're just like, oh, I want a picture with you and a picture with you.
Try to focus on competing while you're fangirling everybody in the whole fucking building.
So you're fangirling everyone.
That's funny.
And they're just cruising around like normal people, and you're like, oh my god, that's even any leg of the Arnold. So they really are surreal experiences, aren't they? Where you do just have all these pros and people you've watched on television your whole life or whatever, and people you look up to. It's funny, you're there as a competitor, but you're sort of walking around going, fuck, keep your shit together. You actually got to compete. Stop asking people for fucking photos. Like, it's such a funny experience. It's such an incredible experience.
One of my favorite memories is like getting photos of Brian Shaw at one of the Arnolds in Melbourne.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, your sound's gone to hell.
Has it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit
gone really fuzzy.
But so I think, was it the first year or the second year? Oh, that might have been the second year. So the first year, just with getting to meet all these people that I had like just put up on massive pedestals because they're amazing. That was incredible, and the competition was incredible. I did well, but every single time I've been to an Arnold's, the goddamn farmers handles have ruined my entire comp. Like, I mean, the field is always at 20 something women in my division, and each time I placed last or second last.
Wow. I don't know if you can be my coach anymore having grip like that, Alana. Jesus.
It wasn't the grip. Okay, so the first time was just inexperience on my part. I was lined up, ready to go. I'd never been in a competition this big, and they were running it head-to-head, four across.
Yeah, yep.
And so I was like chalked up, waiting there, and then they had to measure someone's thing, and then they had to put the farmers back and everything else, and I didn't re-chalk my hands. And I get sweaty palms when I'm nervous. So as soon as I picked it up, it was like, oh shit, okay. And they also had the rule that no one in your weight division could assist you, and no one could, like, your coach couldn't assist you or anything else. So I'm like halfway up the track. I don't have any chalk. I'm just here like just constantly trying to pick up these farmers that are just slipping out of my hands. And then a girl from the under 64s category ran me chalk because that was a loophole, and technically she could.
Yeah.
And then I finished it.
It's funny, like you always want to. That's such a rookie error though. Like it's like, which we've all made. Like even like, you know, it's rare that I won't finish a farmers in one go, but even still, I'll still chuck a chunk of chalk under my reband, like my warm pants, or under my knee sleeve or something, just one piece in there, just in case it goes to hell. As a tip for everybody listening.
And since that comp, I did.
Yeah, right. You only do it once.
Yeah, but then the next year, they had slightly different farmers handles, which were exceptionally smooth, and too much chalk.
Right.
Just stuffed you.
Yeah, because and this is an interesting thing a lot of people won't realize as well. A bare metal smooth handle is better with a bit of sort of moisture and friction there, as opposed to super dry and slick. Like people really need to try lifting different things on different handles all the time, because you never know what you're going to get in competitions. There's nothing standard as much as they try to standardize it.
And
kind of like smooth stones, right, Luke?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like a really slick, smooth, sealed stone, if you're not using tacky, of course, actually responds better to like a bit of a clammy arm or some spit on there. Don't do that during COVID, kids. But you know, a bit of moisture on your hands can actually help more than chalk would on a really smooth stone. So, yeah.
I was just thinking that, like, the second year Rachel, because I think I went with Rachel both years. She also qualified for heavyweight. The second year, she was like, "No, these handles, you got to spit on your hands," and she's literally like licking her hands and putting them on there. It's like, oh, we can't do that
How times have changed, right?
now. Yeah.
It's funny. I was.
So
I think I watched that on something the other day. It might have been the Olympics or even the CrossFit Games. Somebody's walked out to do an event. And it was the wrestling. The dude's like drank some water, spat it all over his hands, and then gone out to wrestle. And I'm like, holy fuck, dude! It's the middle of COVID. Like you barely got your sport going. You're out here like, on a camera spitting all over your hands. I mean, they're wrestling, so they're covered in shit anyway. But fucking hell, I cracked up.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. Anyway.
It actually weirdly freaks me out when I watch like TV shows and people are like close together talking and stuff. And you're like, that doesn't compute anymore. And I wonder what the ramifications are for us long term with, you know, us seeing people actually talk and communicate and not be 1.5 meters apart from each other.
It's a real paradigm shift, isn't it? It's like,
watching videos of people blowing out birthday candles on cakes and then sharing the cake. I'm like, ew.
Right.
Oh, been programmed to think this way now.
Yeah, it's so quick how it's changed.
Yeah, right.
Is my audio coming through better now?
Yeah, that's way better, man.
Okay.
Just went fuzzy a bit before. I think you were having Ash's electrocution issues. You just inherited them.
Yeah, I might have to change something, but that's all right.
No, it's all good now, though.
All right, sweet. Let's talk about you moving away from the sport. Obviously, it was due to back injury. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So Australia's Strongest, I'm pretty certain I did it on the yoke, which was the first event of the first day.
Lovely.
It was a 300 kilo, yeah, I know, right? 300 kilo yoke. And at that point, like, I watch women do it now and I'm just like, gosh, you do it so easy. That was heavy. That was benchmark. That was ridiculous.
I think the sport evolves so fucking quickly these days. Like, it's just gone ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure only a couple of us actually moved it. And this was after Ash Penny. I love Ash Penny. Ash Penny's was an amazing competitor of mine. She was there with me, Australia's Strongest. I think she might have been the first person under the yoke, and something in her knee went. It was either dislocated or she just didn't even quite get it up. So then
Franco Colombo dislocate or?
Oh, I don't think it was that bad, but I think she tore she tore something in her knee anyway. Like, it took a long time to recover. But
been there.
that was not a great start for everyone's peace of mind.
I was gonna say, everyone else is looking on going, fuck.
They're like, oh shit. So yeah, moving that yoke, that was rough because not only was it 300 kilos, but it was the big forklift yoke, and then they had kegs on there as well. So moving the weight and then the stability.
Wow, they used that yoke for you guys as well, because the first year we used that yoke was ASM 2016, and I had a hell of a time with it because obviously we know I love yoke, but I was in terrible shape, and we used that in 2016. I didn't realize, so we're talking about 2017 now, aren't we? And I didn't realize they used it for the girls that year. That thing's a fucking monster.
What is it? Why is it?
It's an adapted, enlarged version of the tower yoke that we have, Andy, by stand or submit. But Mason built it to have this extra large frame around it, and then have like forklift things that shoot off the sides, and you can load motorbikes or kegs or whatever. It's a really good display piece. But
that's awesome.
But empty, it weighs something like 280 kilos before you even put anything on the side. So it's just an absolute monster of a thing.
Yeah, and it was the stability. Like, I just wasn't big enough to keep that stable. But I felt something in my back then, and then continued on as strongman do, with a bunch of painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and just got it done.
Yep.
And I really noticed it on the stones. The last event on the second day, I think I went to put up 140 in a just bar, stone over bar medley, and I got this really weird pain like through from my spine, like all the way through to my stomach. And I was like, oh, that's not right. I'm going to stop. It was 2 days later, I was mowing my lawn, and my disc, mowing my lawn, and my disc like herniated, and I got stuck on my lawnmower. I couldn't move my legs. I was in so much pain. I was like walking around my house with a stick because I couldn't stand up. Yeah, it was really bad. So that's it was not great. I couldn't do anything. And rather than just not train, I decided that I would do bodybuilding and just stick to light weights and high reps and see how that goes. And gave myself a year of doing that, and I came back much stronger, like much stronger, just from all of the isolation work and the different kind of work. And I think my body really needed that break.
Yeah, because you'd gone pretty hard for like 4 straight years. Like you had a contest sort of roster similar to mine. It was just packed with competitions and high level as well, not just car park comps, you know. So you're really hammering yourself in that period. So look, doing all that isolation work probably just helped you fill in a few gaps and let everything rest, right? But it's interesting what you say there. So was that a 140 stone in a series at that competition?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? In 2015, you set an all-time world record at 138.8 kg for a single lift, right?
Yeah.
2 years later, at Australia's Strongest Man, we're seeing 140 kilo, or Australia's Strongest Woman rather, we're seeing 140 kgs in a series. I mean, talk about, we were saying before how quickly the fucking sport evolves. That's only 2 years later, and as we all know here, a heavy stone in a series is a whole different animal to a single lift. So,
and at the end of 8 events in 2 days.
right, exactly.
Would have been nice to get, but I can't beat myself up too much for not getting it.
I'm still mad at you about the 150 you didn't get at bloody Southern Hemisphere's Strongest Woman at the end of the series.
Sorry. I'm tired. That was a good comp. That was great to have that level of girls too, like Big G.
Are you talking about Southern Hemispheres now?
Grateful. Oh, sorry, we can go back to the other one.
No, that's all right.
I was just like, that was a great, just the level of competition, like to have Shayna there as well, and Big G, like that was like, they were very competitive girls.
Yeah, so what she's talking about there, guys, is in 2019, early in, I think it was late March, we had Southern Hemisphere's Strongest Man and Woman on the Central Coast of New South Wales. Now, there was very few of us actually jumped in the men's. It was very close to the Aussie Pro Show for the Arnold, and a lot of guys, there were some South Africans and some top guys were supposed to stick around and do that, but it kind of was too soon after. I think it was a week after maybe, or 2 weeks after, and a lot of people flew back home and sort of just didn't stick around. So unfortunately, in the men's, it ended up being myself, Arthur from New Zealand, and Eddie Williams were really the main hitters there in the men's. But the women's category in the Southern Hemisphere's Strongest Woman was fucking stacked. It was probably one of the best international lineups we've ever had in this country. And that was a 2-day, I think, 8-event contest run by Phil Burgess. And it was quite a good comp. We had that fucking rain, though. Remember how wet it was? It was just horrendous. But that was sandbags. Oh Jesus! It was just horrific, and it was a really heavy, like high level comp, and it was Alana's return to Strongwoman, and unbeknownst to us, it was her last hurrah at that point as well. But she, against a very high standard, she came out of retirement or semi-retirement, pulled out a massive win, took the biggest title of her career, and then promptly retired on top, which is. That's kind of the fairy tale finish, right?
Yes, because those girls are getting way too strong. I was not lining up for that again.
So the current Australia's Strongest Woman is Nicole Generich. she won that in 2019, and obviously it hasn't been contested since because of COVID. And same with Coco as Australia's Strongest Man incumbent. But
I
yeah,
don't think there's anyone that could contest that right now anyway.
yeah, and so Big G took second behind Alana at Australia's at Southern Hemispheres, and I don't think Big G's been touched ever since. She's just gone from strength to strength, and quite literally, and she's genuinely world class now, and I don't think anyone here can get near her until she decides not to. So, that's, and Alana now coaches Big G. She's which is an interesting arrangement, but it's good.
I'd like to dive into that, but first, I just want to go back to, your year off when you were doing bodybuilding and stuff. Was there any specific rehab things that you did to help with your back, or was it just like time off?
No, so obviously, there was some time off, but not too much. I've always been told with back injuries that you don't want to be laying around doing nothing. So getting movement, even small amounts of movement back as fast as possible was the first goal. I did a lot of hanging because I had a squat rack at the time out the front with the bar across the top, and just trying to do a bit of decompression for my spine because it was literally crushed. And on top of that, like supplements, so MSM I'm huge on, which I'm always on Reynolds' case about taking enough of, and vitamin C, vitamin C and collagen, and just really making sure just getting the right micronutrients to allow your body to heal properly. Was that were the most important things, and then slowly working back to the movement, and I don't think I deadlifted for about 6 months, and then it was slowly like literally the bar, and then with bands, and then a lot of banded work.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's just always interesting to see what different people do, because obviously if someone is in a lot of pain, often like a surgeon will push for surgery to come back to sports. And then, for those at home that don't know much about, disc herniation, it's basically, inflammation that causes nerves to get very much irritated. And, it's very hard to get rid of if you're constantly putting yourself under compressive loads, which are, making it harder and harder again. So, obviously that year off would have helped a lot to decompress, but doing the extra work to decompress and potentially strengthening, musculature in isolation around those things would have had a dramatic effect as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does it
sorry, Andy, go.
No, that's all right. I was going to jump into something else. So
go for it. No, you're right.
I was just going to talk about what it feels, what it's like coaching this guy.
We get there eventually.
Maybe an easier question first is like, how is it getting into coaching, and then how is it coaching Luke? Maybe like that progress will like segue us into it nicely.
Who's
into
your favorite
coaching.
athlete, and why is it me?
Getting into coaching just came about because people would see me doing it in the gym, and there was no one else really doing it, and I've made enough mistakes to be able to point out when you were making a mistake early. It just kind of came about like that. For the longest time, I wasn't like coaching. I was just training together with people, and that escalated into coaching when it took up a lot more of my time, and for a lot of people, I had been doing it for free. And I think I just got taken advantage of a bit too much there. Hence I just turned to coaching and just wanting to help, serious athletes address some of their issues and imbalances. And a lot of it's just come from my own trial and error. I always try and search out people more knowledgeable than me for problems. I love to hassle Paul May all the time. With and he's a powerlifting legend.
Yeah, Paul Nay's a former like world champion powerlifter, Australian, based on the Sunshine Coast, but awesome guy. But yeah, he trains out of Muscle Hut where Alana's at, and yeah, he's a fountain of knowledge, especially coming back from injuries really severely.
Coming back from injuries, like I mean, this guy got hit by a car and broke both of his legs, and then has torn both of his pecs off, and all these things, and has come back and been better and done better every time. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure at under 105 or something, or under 100, he squatted 400 after breaking both his legs. Like, he's just phenomenal. So
that was after being hit by a car.
Yeah, in Germany, I think, from memory, what he told me. But
sounds right.
Yeah, sorry. Continue.
That's all right. We're going on the journey of how I became a coach, but it's and just saving people the time of like, it is hard when you're learning a sport. There was a couple of people around, but not really. Like when I started, it was more like, well, it's Strongman, just lift it, and if it hurts, just take some ibuprofen and duct tape it up. And that's not the approach I wanted to take. Like, I still want to live a life.
Yeah, Mike Jones' approach.
Yes, the Gov Jones.
Gov. It's funny because even as recently as 5 to 6 years ago, there was a genuine economy of coaches that really knew what the fuck they were talking about when it came to, well, I guess strength in general in Australia, but also generally moving strongman, you know what I mean? Like, people just didn't know how the fuck to coach it. It was such a hard thing to juggle. Now, of course, there's well, apparently every person's a fucking coach these days. They do one comp, they're a coach. But there are some genuinely decent coaches out there now. But that's obviously because we've now had the sport at a level long enough for people to learn the craft and be able to then communicate that on. People are much more fortunate now to have access to that. Back in the day, for us, it was just like, fuck, just try it and see what the hell breaks us. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, like, that's what I did, and now I can be like, well, we don't do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
But no, I've coached some really like great people, some people that I wish were still in and around the sport. But they've moved on to other things. But coaching Reynolds. I had literally chased him a few times because, like, we've been friends for a long time. And just because, like, with all the respect to everything that you've done in your career, you're just making so many easily identifiable mistakes for someone on the outside to see.
I agree.
And wouldn't hear it from anyone anyway. So I think it was just a matter of me wearing him down. I'm like, just let me do it.
That's funny. After
let me try and help you and see how it goes. Because
after I had that disastrous turnout in Barcelona, I didn't cope with the travel. I had short notice, all the excuses under the sun. I turned up in pretty poor shape. I was strong, but I just wasn't a comp at that level. You just cannot be unprepared, and I got absolutely fucking destroyed there. And then obviously I came back. I had the invite for Santa Monica, which is probably the greatest regret of my career, that I got injured and couldn't do that fucking comp in January. So we're talking September. But then I came back and quickly turned around trying to prep for ASM that year in 2019, tore my bicep, blah, 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 tore my fucking pec, and the whole thing just went to shit. This is when you were now on the scene, Andy. And it was but it was after Barcelona, and with that injury, it's funny, I had 4 people come up to me about wanting to coach me. You were one of them, Alana. I had Craig Reed, Jeremy Hogg, and then Nick, one of the guys I've competed against in the States, wanted to approach me. And I was sort of sitting there going, I really do need to do something, because I was on the verge of fucking retirement. I was pretty down in the dumps there. And it was funny because I then went up to visit my brother in February the following year to just get out of Sydney and go see him. And you and I caught up a few times. And by then you'd been fucking pecking the shit out of me about coming on board. I was like, remember we talked, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. And then I don't know, I think I went to bloody Australia Zoo, and then I think I rang you or messaged you and said, where the hell are you right now? And you were like 10 Ks away. I said, let's have a coffee. And I said, all right, let's hear it. And you laid it out, and I said, yep, done. I think 6 hours later, I messaged you and said, yep, let's fucking do it. And it's been the best decision I ever made as far as career wise. So yeah.
Yay.
Do you guys
so glad.
Do you guys mind talking about some of the things that you worked on from the start?
Go for it.
No, I got no problems talking about that.
Yeah, I know. I figured you weren't. It was mainly Luke.
Yeah.
So before I met Alana, I was just a fucking disaster.
No, definitely not. But your deadlift was.
But yes, let's just continue.
Yeah, my deadlift was
Up for some savagery, and you know it. And
yeah, it was awful, and it was really, and you cannot have a shit deadlift at a high level. It's just, it hamstrings you completely. You might as well just retire.
you just can't have a shit deadlift
I think
at
your
all
problem
in
was that you
strongman,
had too much hamstrings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
too
go on,
much
Lana.
back. No, you're right.
Too much back.
No,
not
and
enough
this is
legs.
like our first kind of catch up for coaching to help you with your deadlift. And not that you come across intimidating sometimes, but like the first few things that I wanted to correct on your deadlift, you weren't in agreement at all. Which is fine. It's defensive.
Weird
like,
that.
you know, like
Doesn't sound like
Luke's
Luke
been
at all.
around a lot longer than me, has a lot more career experience and strongman experience and stuff like that. So obviously, like, I understand that might have been hard to take some criticism, and I can't really sugarcoat stuff very well, which sometimes rubs people up the wrong way. If something's shit, I'm like, well, this is shit and we need to fix it, and that can upset people. So I did mention a couple of things I wanted to change with his deadlift, and he wasn't keen. So I spotted Paul May in the gym, and I'm like, hey, you just want to pop down here.
Yeah,
And
just so happened to have a legend that Luke's very aware of and respects highly. Oh, I'll just pull him out of my back pocket because Luke's been a stubborn arsehole down the other end.
And this guy agrees with me, so maybe you should take some notes.
And that's exactly how that happened. So that was, I brought Paul down, and Paul pointed out everything that I pointed out, and then even a couple of other things, because it's just amazing at picking things.
Yeah.
And then from that moment, I think everything I've asked of Luke or asked him to do, he's done without question. So that was a good moment for me. Definitely needed that. And you can just see in his deadlift now, it's just so much cleaner, so much better, so much faster. And it's only going to continue to get better. So we're in the right track.
Yeah, we've got some big goals there, obviously, and it's funny because we've already hit numbers that I never even really dreamed of in my career, and doing them as well as I am, and it's really changed my perspective on how to even train for deadlift and just things in general. So it's been a huge learning experience for me, and for me to actually ask. So before Alana, I worked with Wellesley for a couple of years, who's a really great friend of both of ours and a very experienced strongman guy. And I asked Wellesley to just help me with some structure, with some programming, because I was just a fucking mess. I was just grinding myself to dust and getting frustrated, and so I needed some help there, and that sort of ran its course, and that was great. I loved working with Wells. I did reasonably well at some good international shows there, but obviously relationships like that run their course, and then it was time for me to move on. And so I since I've worked with Alana, obviously I'm probably in career best form, to be fair, even though I haven't really had the opportunity to display that too much. I'm stronger in pretty much every movement, in better shape as far as just general health and ability, and it's actually going to prolong my career longer than it really should be, especially with somebody that has an injury list as long as fucking mine. But no, it's this is really a good example to anybody as why finding the right coach for you is so important. And it's important for me. Asking for help is always that I respect the person, which I do immensely respect Alana. And it's probably funny from the outside in, people seeing someone like me, pro strongman, 14 years in sport and all this shit, and they turn around, I've got a middleweight strong woman as a coach. That might not be an immediate fit for a lot of people. And but yeah, it's the right coach for you is the important thing for people to remember.
I think that's a pretty good point, Luke. Just like, it doesn't really, if anything, you don't want yourself as your coach. Like, you don't want another version of yourself as your coach. You want someone that can see other aspects that you're blind to, that's going to be able to help you out. It's not like, oh, can I just get someone that's like sort of done the exact same mistakes as I have, or like messed up? You're just like, hey, can I get someone that has a separate view that you get along with, that you respect, that relationship can work a lot better.
And somebody who has the courage, like obviously, like Alana said, I can be, a pretty intimidating figure without even trying. But it's like, and I'm a stubborn asshole. So, as Andy's very aware, but like somebody like Alana, excuse the phrase, but with the balls to actually cut through that bullshit and say, listen, dickhead, this is what actually really needs to happen. And we've had some great fucking blues, me and Alana. We'll probably continue to, but somebody who doesn't back down from you when you know you need it. And it's very important to establish, like we've said in like the last 20 podcasts, how important and how different the coach athlete relationship is to any other relationship in the world, really. So no, it's been really good. And enough about me, because we're in danger of turning this into a Luke podcast again, which bores the crap out of even me. But
we're calling you an asshole, so it's funny.
fair enough. Let's talk about some of the rest of your roster, because you've got some great athletes on board. I mean, you literally have probably one of the greatest female strongwomen ever in Australia and possibly potentially the world once she goes internationally. And Nicole Generich, who I'd love to have on the podcast at some point as well. And you've got Darcy as well, one of Australia's really top 105 strongmen as well. So they're
the grasshopper.
The grasshopper. So.
Yes. Nicole came about. Coaching Nicole came about. I think it was after Southern Hemispheres, where she really had struggled with the monster dumbbell. And I don't think her coach at the time was overly knowledgeable at monster dumbbell either. So she came up and saw me, and we worked on that, and there was just instant improvement.
That is fucking fascinating, because Andy, and I don't know if you're aware,
she's the record holder, right?
She's about 2 seconds away from being the world record holder in that lift, and this was a lift that she struggled with like 2 years ago. It's hilarious.
Yes.
That's phenomenal, really.
Because one of the things I don't like other coaches doing is taking on athletes and taking full credit for everything that they've done. Like, she achieved a lot under her previous coach, but there was just a couple of things that she could have been better at. And monster dumbbell is definitely one of them. So that you can see that's come a long way, and we just got along so well. Communicating with G is easy, straightforward. She's very, very straightforward, honest, down to earth person. So it's a very easy relationship for us. And she's just gone from strength to strength, and it's just unfortunate that she hasn't had a stage to kind of put that on at the moment, because she's like, her lifts are incredible. I cannot wait for a stage set for G. Like, she will get to World's Strongest Woman, and she'll podium there easy.
Yeah, I have no doubt either, even having seen what I've seen. And I know G, she's a really dedicated athlete and a really lovely person. And I have to say that I know a lot of female athletes, in general, but a lot of the female athletes I sort of interact with, they actually really look up to G. I think she's a great role model in the sport for women, because she's such a great person, but a great athlete. She's
like 6 foot.
Oh, she's a monster. Yeah, she's really the first.
Literally looking up to her all the time.
Right, she's massive. She's a giant. Like, she's really the first Australian strongwoman that's come along with the frame necessary that can probably really take on your Donna Moores and your Andrea Thompsons and those big international.
She's built like a thrower.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like, and so you guys did a powerlifting meet recently. What numbers did she hit there? Hit some phenomenal lifts.
What was it? The best, the one that I love the most, even though it didn't count for powerlifting, she got red lighted because there was a small hitch, but she pulled 250 deadlift.
So that's insane.
It was incredible. And like, one of the other lifts that she was really lacking on previously was her squat. I can't even remember. Before she came to me, it was well under 200, and it might have been like 150 or 155.
Yeah, I remember seeing her do some really hard 150s.
Yeah, and I think she squatted 225, 220 in her last comp.
Phenomenal.
And then she got her bench up to, I want to say it was 120 or 125. It's close. Yep. It's nudging mine anyway. She's chased down all of my numbers, and now she's just trying to take my bench from me. I'm like, no, let me have the best bench.
So let's talk about that, because you've done some powerlifting as well. So what were your best numbers? Because you've hit some really big numbers in powerlifting as well.
Yeah, so I did powerlifting one time because I wanted to try it. It's a
One
little
time.
too boring for me. One time. Did it one time and I broke all the record, nearly all the records. No. Yeah. No, I competed under 90s. Was it submaster? I think I'm a submaster.
Is that
I
how
did
old
a
we are?
190. Yeah. In powerlifting, you're a submaster. So
I think in CrossFit we're
Um,
masters or some shit. I don't know. They're fucking liars.
Hey, being submaster is safe in
Oh.
powerlifting. If any younger and you get, ugh.
but yeah, I did a capo event at Muscle Hut. I squatted 190, and I only went for my second squat just because it was a grind and I really wanted the big deadlift at the end. And I didn't have a hope in hell of getting the record for the squat. I'm pretty sure that was in the 220s.
Okay.
And squat's never been great for me either. And that was due to a previous injury, which we can touch on. But and then was it squat, bench, I had 125, and that was a national record for that weight and age category. And then deadlift, finally got that 500 pounds, so 227.5 deadlift. So I had been chasing that my whole strongman career as well, just wanting that 500 pound deadlift because it was just such a thing.
Right, absolutely. There you go, Yannick. So I'm just going to give a shout out to Yannick again. We just talked about two girls that have an equivalent or better deadlift than you, Yannick. So pick up your game, mate.
I like he probably doesn't listen to this, and
Like, he definitely doesn't.
We just need to take like the grabs of each time we have a shot at Yannick.
I'll just send them to Yannick. Just like,
Do
I
like
was bullying him. Like,
do like a 2-minute highlight reel and just fire it off to him with different guests singing shit.
they're not even podcasts. They're just me just yelling into a microphone, telling them shit. Like, this is ridiculous at this point.
That's great.
I just want to go backwards just a tiny bit because something that you said twice basically really stood out to me, and it was, you identified, a weakness in Luke in his deadlift. You identified a weakness in Big G in her monster dumbbell, and that seemed to be the thing that you chased, which is cool. Like that seems, diagnostic, and then solution is what coaches do. But what was cool was like that, like getting those as your big wins seems to be what really sold these two athletes on, a long-term relationship. So is that something that you do chase, like trying to establish a win early on to solidify a relationship?
Well, I wouldn't say it's to solidify a relationship, but not chasing as early wins, but just generally helping. Like if you can see that somebody has a weak point and it carries over into everything, if you can fix that weak point, everything else will lift up for that person and they will do better, feel better, and be better. So yes, like you could say that I look for people's weaknesses because that's what nobody wants to work on. Like nobody. When I first started training, so I have a really bad knee. I have a vascular tumor in my knee, and that's from being trampled on by a horse when I was like 10, show jumping.
Nice.
And then I favored that leg for a decade. I had that bad atrophy on my left leg that like my quad dipped in. I didn't have a quad anymore.
Wow.
So when I first started training and trying to squat, I was squatting and holding a pole, like just holding a pole so I wouldn't fall over because my leg would give out. My leg would just randomly give out whilst I was walking and I'd fall over. So I do see a lot of benefit in just working on your weaknesses and fixing those up because that's brought everything else up and brought everything else up in my life. It's made my life so much better just by working on my bung knee.
I think that's just a good point of just like back to the relationships with coaching. It's not establishing the relationship by the weakness. It's being like, oh, I'm willing to tell you that this is the part that I think will best benefit you. And then establishing like, this is my process of getting there. They do it. Okay, this person knows what they're talking about because they were willing to address my problem that I was unwilling to see. And then they were able to help me. And from there, like you have high level athletes that like I'm sure love your coaching and won't like go anywhere else because it's just like this person was willing to do the hard thing, which was tell them the truth, and was willing to give them the path, and that's awesome when it comes to coaching.
and that's the key, isn't it? It's tell your athlete the truth. Don't be afraid to hurt feelings if necessary, because ultimately it's coming from a good place and a very necessary place. And if the athlete can't get on board with that, well, that's on the athlete, because there's only so much as coaches that we can do.
Yeah. And what's the responsibility of the coach? Make it better.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, like right before I'm about to tell Luke something really harsh or savage, I'm like, I say this with love, right? And then I just say whatever.
I do that with athletes, but I say it the other way around. I'm like, I say this with absolute hate. This is still what you need. This is from loathing.
Oh, that's funny.
I loathe your weaknesses.
Yeah, I loathe it so much that I'm willing to help it. That's what it is. It's like, look, your poor quads are just like disgusting to me. I need this sorted ASAP.
Like,
I'm not looking at you at all, Andy. That's not. I
don't need any quads now. I have wraps.
You have wraps, yeah.
Yes, wraps.
Easiest way around it. Well played, Andy.
Yeah. So like, and right now, Alana, you're in a contest prep for bodybuilding again. And
yes.
Yeah, and I know you're struggling with calorie deficits right now, because some of our conversations are quite interesting when you're a bit low.
Oh, I know.
What are you, like 12 weeks out now?
7 and 8. So
it's really soon.
Yeah, it's getting very soon.
It's really soon.
Are you excited?
I should probably start shredding soon. Yeah, I'm excited. But again, like, so my first competition, the bodybuilding one I did in 2018, I had a coach, brilliant coach under Mike Devenham, just because this is something that I had never done before, and had zero knowledge about. And he was really good and taught me a lot of things. And this time around, I've wanted to do it myself, purely because that's the kind, I don't know, this is the kind of person I am. I now want to put in what I know about my body and what I've learned from Mike into practice. And I have struggled with a couple of things that took a bit more research. Like, for instance, the past couple of weeks, I've had days where I literally almost cannot move and I feel like I'm dying. I'm like, why do I feel like I'm dying? I've lived off less food. Like, what is going on here? And with a couple of other factors, like I ran out of vitamin C, and I'm taking a lot of vitamin C at the moment. It's like 8,000 to 15,000 milligrams a day. Like, it's a large amount. Yeah. Because your body requires it to get.
A standard tablet's only 500, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Recommended daily intake's like 300.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's very low.
Is there a reason for the high vitamin C intake?
Yeah, so it's so full of antioxidants and helps clear toxins and everything else from your system. And getting to a point now where I'm the leanest I've ever been in my adult life, my body's like breaking down fat storages that have not been broken down before. And from what I've read and now that I've put into practice, it seems to be working. So, but in theory, my body wasn't dealing with the quick shed of like toxins being put into back into my body. And I wasn't taking the vitamin C, and my water intake was a bit too low for it to break down properly.
Probably had free radicals going insane because of the amount of duress you're placing your body under. That stress there, through the deficits, the hard training. Obviously, recovery becomes a harder issue when you're not eating as much. Your free radicals were probably going insane. So consuming large amounts of those antioxidants would have made a huge impact in controlling that situation for sure.
Yeah, well, I've had it happen twice now where like it's weird. I almost feel high and can't move. Like everything's heavy. And that's not from the calorie deficit. So I knew it had to be from something else. So I've picked back up on the water and on the vitamin C's, and I'm fine again. So I really feel like that maybe that was it. We will see. But it's interesting. Like something goes wrong, and it's not like me to accept that, oh, well, I just feel like shit and I'm just going to have to die the rest of the prep. It's like, no. Why? Why is this going wrong, and why does this feel so bad? And
especially that far out too, right, from a prep, because you're still a couple of months out. Like you shouldn't really.
You only want to die in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, right.
And you're not limiting like carbohydrates or like sugars and stuff now yet, right? Or are you already doing that?
Right, it's breaking up a little bit. What was that? Limiting carbohydrates?
Yeah, are you at the moment?
I do, but that's been a whole nother diet process for myself. On average, I think I'm on about 200 grams of carbs a day, but I source a lot of that through fruits and vegetables only. So I'm getting a large amount of food, which is great. But I've never been one. My body doesn't enjoy a large amount of carbs. I will instantly gain weight around my midsection if I eat too much. If I have too much of an insulin spike, like it'll be instant. People think you can't gain weight overnight. Trust me, I can, and I do.
Can we just marvel at like the fact that Alana is able to prep for a bodybuilding show whilst working for an ice cream company?
You work for an ice cream company?
I work for the best ice cream company. So I work for Ben and Jerry's and Streets.
Wow.
So I manage them, I manage their sales on the Sunshine Coast. And that's why when I decided to go open Strongman, that was easy.
Extra 5 times a day.
Not even kidding. Like some days, because I structured my calories like around 5,000 a day, and I'm like, well, this is really low. Let's have a second tub of Ben and Jerry's today. Worst way to go about it. Terrible way. But
Don't listen to that diet advice, anybody.
So that's a do as I say, not as I do thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because this time around, Alana, like I know last time one of the things that you were sort of criticized by the judges in the bodybuilding was a little bit blockiness, especially through your midsection.
A little bit.
Yeah, right. So you've got to understand for anyone listening.
She had a strong woman body.
So it's just like going under a 300 yoke might do that. Like.
Yeah, right. So Alana's midsection was insanely strong, but it was like square because she was so thick from doing such massive lifts for so long. So a big focus for Alana this time, as the last couple of years, has been trying to shift her aesthetics completely by, bringing up the quads, bringing up glutes, increasing that taper, bringing her waist by not doing insane, weight squats and yokes and things like that. It legitimately was a thing you've had to work through. I mean, talk us through how hard that's been.
Yeah, that's been interesting. So I've purposely atrophied my core. I only just started squatting. I only just started squatting again recently, and I did heavy squats the other day, and my core just blew out straight away. I was like, oh shit, okay, no heavy squats for me, even though it was so fun. It was fun. I had the greatest time. But no, I mean, yeah, for the last, I couldn't even tell you the last time I deadlifted, to be honest, just because that's purposely atrophying, like not using my core in things like that. So no compound lifts, none. So and I've... Yeah, go.
Yeah, so here's a question, like that's bringing up legs and glutes in order to, like, you're trying to bring up that area, but also atrophy the core. So compounds are out of the picture. What's your go-to leg hypertrophy? What's a week look like for you in that regard? We're focusing leg extension, leg press. What's your go-to movements for that?
Leg day. Leg day only just recently, with bringing the squats back in the last, 4 months. Usually a good 10 by 10, constant tempo, minimal breaks, so less than a minute. And I've got Shane there watching me, making sure that I don't get to be slack as well.
Shane, her husband is he's a former kickboxer, strongman. He's done bodybuilding himself, and the dude's a hard taskmaster. He doesn't take shit from nobody. So it's Alana's
and can do a leg
slacking.
day. Yeah. Go check out his legs. Holy shit. So goals.
His wheels are insane.
So a good 10 by 10, and then straight on to do a bit of like a superset. So leg extensions, leg press, lunges, leg extension, no break for 5 sets. And it's 10 to 12, 10 wide, 10 narrow on the leg press, and then lunging all the way to the end of the track, whatever that is. I don't count it, and then lunging all the way back.
It's a fucking long way because I had to do it. Remember, I collapsed halfway down with only body weight. I'm like, what the fuck even is this?
Yeah.
You are carrying
and then they get
weight, to be fair. I would struggle if I was like, oh yeah, let's just add 100 kilos to this as well.
You get like 4 normal steps, and then it's like straight back onto the leg extensions again. So that one's rough, but I have 2 leg days in a week, so that's my quad day. There's usually some extra things in there. What else do I do on that day? If I'm feeling really keen, goblet squats, but I'm not usually that keen. Yeah, it just depends on how much I've done. And but then like there's always 20 to 40 minutes on the stairs after. So on the
stairmaster or something.
After the leg day.
And you do that day, a quad day, and you do a separate leg day for like posterior, or do you do 2 quad days like that in a week?
No, so I do a quad day and then I do a glutes and hammies day.
Okay.
So like they obviously they both get worked on each day, but there's one, that's getting hammered and one that's just assisting. Focus. So for the hamstrings and glutes and stuff like that, I've been doing single leg deadlifts on a Smith machine. Ooh. So that's constant tempo, nice long stretch. It's on a single leg, so it's not heavy. It's not going to make my core thick, but it kills me. So that's rough. And then you go on the little Booty Master machine that they've got at the Hut, which I can't remember what they've called it. It's got some funny name on it. And then and just more glute work, glute bridges, and back on the stairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, I only do a handful of exercises, but I do them hard and with a lot of intensity, and then cardio.
Well, quite a bit of volume as well, especially for that quad day. That's approaching like 20, 25, 30 sets in a workout. That's a hefty day.
Yeah. So when Darcy first came to me, and Darcy had a shit squat, and we really needed to work on a lot of instabilities he had throughout his entire squat. The same thing I incorporated when I built up my squat is volume for me is 12 by 20.
At what sort of
you
percentage?
Keep that shit to yourself, Alana.
35 to 40%.
35 to 40%. Okay.
Yeah.
And all competition level squats, so that'd be like whatever high bar squat or low bar squat, whatever the person's like choices.
Yeah, whatever is comfortable. But that's what you do to kind of get everything moving and working, the way that we want it to. And it's interesting enough that one of the massage therapists / physio that I go and see, I brought this up with him that I make my athletes do this, and he's started making his clients weightless, but they now do 12 by 20, and he can't believe the improvement in everything for them, like their leg strength and their stability and all of that. So I mean, that's nice to know.
Yeah It's fucking awful.
Why do you think such a high volume approach is effective, or why are you finding that it's effective? Like, have you postulated the reasons why? Like, could you get the same result, for example, from 6 by 20, and then the extra 6 sets are just
like extension,
an improvement of
more isolated work rather than 12 sets of heavy compounds that's spread out over different exercises and having different proximities to failure? Because if there's 12 sets, 12 sets.
12 sets of 20 reps.
And they're all done at the same weight, right?
Yep.
And I've seen him do this where
sometimes you have to lower
where he's also had like a very strict rest period too. So
that's the worst fucking part.
I'm not an exercise scientist by any means, so I can't tell you exactly why it works. I can just tell you that I've had a lot of success with it working.
Yeah,
And I feel
no,
like
we're
it's
just curious, like
yeah.
what
possibly
you might
fatiguing
think.
those bigger muscles, and really everything involved in your stability and core stability, and smaller muscles that create but more stability, getting them more involved and strengthening them, because they do fatigue under heavy load as well. But it's just, I don't know, a different style of almost hypertrophy training for those.
Yeah, no, I was actually just thinking about it then. I'm like, that's pretty cool, because realistically, if you're doing heavy compounds, a lot of the time you're using is like the fast twitch, because that's what we try to do: big, fast muscles, moving fast. But if you do a I wouldn't say copious amounts of volume, but it's decent and in low rest periods. This is like almost a conditioning piece as well, like for like building an engine. Like this is
almost
this is good for
right?
strongman. This is good for like that sort of movement. But also, like if you fatigue those faster twitch over time, you're probably going to get these other slower twitches, which is typically the stability, because stability things aren't there for like fast movements. It's there for like holding things together, making sure things go all right. So they might not get touched by a 3x3 at a high percentage, because you're only exhausting the faster twitch muscle fibers. But this may just like, you're just torching everything here. So the hypertrophy on that, you probably get rid of not only using the big muscles, just everything needs to be used for 10x10 at a high enough percentage. So that's when I'm just thinking it through a little bit, that might be a reason that you're getting such good ROI on like heavy compounds of a high volume, because you just get everything involved, and the stability increases are coming from the fact that like they have to be used. They're probably not getting used at a 3x3 at a high percentage. So that's
absolutely
intriguing.
Yeah, it's a funny one that obviously I'd never really gone that high with volume before I met Alana, especially at the intensities required, short rest periods, etc. Like you said, Andy, it's almost like CrossFit, but if we strip strongman down, essentially it does have a CrossFit component in that there's a massive workload and a massive engine requirement for strongman, where you have to hit high percentages for a long period of time sometimes, and do that repetitively over the day. So like you were saying, I think, Ash, it's almost like a conditioning piece after a fashion, where it not just it obviously builds your mental resilience as well to that pain and that workload, which is a huge factor. But yeah, it just really, I've found, because it's only like, we only do it for when it's me or whatever. It's 4 to 6 weeks as a sort of a preface to going into a strength block. And it really, I have noticed a big difference in the motor under me. My capacity to endure work, even at the age of 36 now, is a lot higher than it was when I was younger, by basically prepping me with blocks of this amount of load. I like the points you made about the slow and the fast twitch there, Ash, because effectively what it's doing is plugging fucking gaps up, man.
Yeah, because it's like everything needs to be used, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was getting towards, is just like 3x3, you can sort of hide things. Like if you got strong as fuck, whatever, that's just going to be what's used. But like if you're doing a 10x10, man, just recruit everything you can. Like everything's going to get torched here. So yeah, it's like, that's an interesting thing. And I think it's cool that you saying the short rest intervals as well, because a lot of people don't take into account the density component of strength training, which is not really necessary for like weightlifting and powerlifting, because it's pretty clear what the rest intervals are needed. But like strongman and CrossFit as well, like density of training is a primary component, because you're doing like most events are like a minute. So it's not one rep, it's as many as you can do in a minute. So having a GPP phase of like high density, high volume, and then going from there, and you can do multiple events, like workouts in a week, because you've already put all this GPP underneath it, that you can stack your 3x3 as well as your event work on top of that, which is cool, because it's like you're bringing up all the instabilities as well as like having that base for future event work, which is typically more like neurologically taxing and just fucks people up more, really.
Yeah, well, 100%.
Yeah, it does. And it works the same like progressive overload. Like every time someone goes back to do a 10x10 or a 12x20, they're always using just slightly more weight, just a small amount, 5 more kilos or whatever.
Ooh,
My
over
friend's
120
gonna
reps. That heads up. That tonnage is
but then you look at the results of so Darcy in his Darcy, I'm pretty sure, I hope he doesn't quote me here, but he had a 160 squat. Like, it was not great. His last powerlifting comp, he did 305.
Yes, that's a thing, right?
Yeah, and
the
Darcy,
results sort of speak for themselves.
Yeah, and Darcy's an under 105, so he's not. He's obviously a big guy in the general sense of the term, but in strength sports, he's not a big guy. He's a very muscular guy and very lean, so he looks fantastic as well. But he's also become a really good stone lifter, which is something all of your athletes and kind of have in common. We're all good stone lifters. But yeah, Darcy's done over a 200 kilo stone right in front of me. In fact, I was there when he first cracked 200 down at Stand or Submit. So the weaknesses he had were fucking heaps of them, but he's turned to a really rounded, fucking great athlete. When he hit that 305 squat, I was like, holy shit, man. Like, that's a thing now. Like, yeah.
No, it's such a great athlete too. And again, like, it's another just disappointing thing for all you guys that you haven't been able to show off, like, because you've all just made these ridiculous leaps in the past 12 months in strength and performance. And, like, everyone, because I'm onto them all the time, everyone's like better with their diet, they're better with their nutrition, they're better with their rest.
Yeah.
So all of you, I feel like that's my biggest job as your coach, is to be like, no, now stop and now rest, because they just kill themselves and go hard and heavy, and
which was probably my biggest fault, was that I would just go and I don't know when to switch it off sometimes, or never used to know, and would just go until something literally broke, and then surgery made me have a break. And it's
the old surgery deload. Classic.
Right. Obviously that resilience and that stubbornness and I guess toughness is what's allowed me to do one of the toughest sports in the world for such a long time. But there's also, you've got to use your fucking brain every now and then, and otherwise you just, by 36 I should be long gone from this sport. So it's you've been really good like that, Alana, in sort of teaching me really to know where the limits are, but still push those limits with genuine intensity.
And you can do it. Like, I can't remember what event it was. It could have even been Australia's Strongest. I don't know. But there was an event I trained for, and I just hammered myself. And I ended up with like CNS fatigue and couldn't train for 3 weeks before like straight into the event. And I just had to focus on my nutrition and my mobility and getting massages and everything else, and still came out to win it. But I didn't train. I did not lift. I couldn't squat a barbell for 3 weeks because my body was like, nah,
trashed,
cooked, done.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's why you do those high volume things like we were just discussing before. You only do them for short periods, and it's also not something you'd chuck at a fucking beginner or even an intermediate necessarily. Like you would reserve that for certainly the right athletes. You couldn't just chuck that at anybody.
People that are already well-rounded, and it's like we're just going right back to the beginning, and just that's where you'll see somebody's weaknesses in the middle of a 12 by 20. You'll see where the squat falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Ash said before, you can kind of hide things in a set of 3, but in a set of 20, potentially you're not going to hide things. And then the other one is like you're also, recommending a very, very low weight, like 30% is a weight that technically you should be quite proficient with. Like you shouldn't be, getting to that technical breakdown stage.
Yeah.
So if you're,
everyone starts that too. Everyone starts that like, oh, it's so light, and it's like, yeah, just keep going.
Exactly.
Wait for set 11.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
You get to about set 7 and you're looking for a way out. Like, it's like, if I jump off the top of the rack and land on my neck correctly, I should die. So,
and the other thing like that you mentioned before as well is like, like when you're under a heavy yoke or, doing heavy farmers carries in a competition or like in comp training, man, there'll be times where I'm like running with it. I'm like, oh, my quads are on fire. Yeah. And, it's a very similar feeling to, having,
breathing as well.
Doing, and like bracing and everything. So, getting under a light barbell, doing movement that is, less risky as well than potentially doing like heavy farmers, heavy yokes. Like it's definitely preparing you as a strong man as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I'm heavily against is people doing too much heavy yoke. It's because the weights that's considered heavy these days is just ridiculous, and it's so draining on your body and your CNS and everything. Like people don't understand. It can take a month to recover from a proper heavy yoke. Like it's going to take for everything to get back to where it was, for your spine not to be crushed, for you not to be half an inch shorter. Which you laugh, but like you can do a yoke and end up a little shorter for a small amount of time.
And like Andy doesn't have a lot of height to spare, so
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm already like, it's weird that I started off in like this hole and now I'm like in a slightly lower hole in the yoke.
It's interesting what you say there, Alana, because Jordan, who hands down the only person he could probably put up there at the same level as Derek Boyer, is Australia's greatest ever yoke walker, if you ask me, and Eddie Williams was probably right up there as well.
Absolutely.
And I know. But Geordie always advocated for not doing super heavy yokes all the fucking time. If you watched his training, it's obviously relative, but he would be doing a lot of speed runs with lower percentages, working on his foot speed, working on his technique work, and then would be front squatting the house down as a weightlifter, which is what gave him a lot of his strength and stability, obviously for strongmen in general, but stone lifting and yoke carries. And even some of the all-time greats, guys like Terry Hollands, who were renowned for their speed and strength under yokes, heavy yokes, 500 kilos plus, they're doing insanely fast passes. They barely ever went over 300, 320 in training because they would purely work on foot speed and do a lot of volume at lower percentages because they didn't want to crush their body, like you said, for a fucking month and not be able to do any training.
And what is the point in training an event that you need speed for slowly because it's heavy? You will train your body to pick something up and move quick and just keep doing that. You don't want to train slow. You don't want to go into that event being slow at it. But as you know, for yoke, my preference for you guys is weighted lunges.
Yeah.
I love weighted lunges. It builds the hip stability and movements like no other. And
is that a barbell weighted lunge, like on the back, or is that just dumbbells or any weight?
Yeah, it's usually barbell. They normally need. Okay. Proper weight. Like I think I've had Shane up to 160.
Yeah,
walking
Shane's
lunges.
a freak. I am definitely not doing that.
No, but it's what you're you're able to do, and his body is able to do that and to handle that, which is why he could finish the course with that 400 450 car walk that we had at Queensland's.
Yeah, which and a car walk requires even greater stability than a fucking yoke does because they flop all over the place. They're bloody awful.
It was rough.
Yeah, it's just good coaching, right? It's just like, okay, what is actually required? What is the cost?
Fit for purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, fatigue is super high for your yoke. It's not the only event. So, okay, you can get really good at yoke with super heavy yokes. Say bye to your deadlifts and squats for the rest of the week or the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
Also, okay, you can use the speed and technique. Pretty easy, low fatigue, awesome. Get jacked.
Yeah,
that's what helps.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is you see so many new people doing it wrong, where you see people out there that can barely squat 180, 200, and they're trying to do pickups with 450, 500 kilo yokes, over 1,000 pound lifts, and they're stumbling along with 350, 400, 450 kilo yokes, but they cannot even squat 180, 200. It's like, are you
but if they just push that squat up a little bit, it would just be like, oh, that would just cover it. Just again, general capacity rather than specificity in the
yoke picks are some of the dumbest things I've ever seen people try.
Oh yeah, it's just so much fatigue for cool. Will this carry over? No, but it looked cool for those 10 seconds.
No, it's purely it's an Insta phenomenon.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like 1/10 of a squat. Cool. You're not even doing a quarter squat.
It went through a real phase there in Australia. There were so many guys who were fucking hopeless doing 500 or 600 kilo fucking pickups. I'm like, and Biggie was like, God, you guys are just going to snap in half, and nobody would listen. It was hilarious because why would you listen to the best guy in the country? Fuck that.
Yeah.
Hey, I
overtake him by
remember doing
listening
yoke
to him,
pickups at one point. I remember doing heavy yoke pickups. But yeah, no, it wasn't worth what you got from it, which was almost nothing.
Yeah.
Didn't help. Just maybe it'll help with your confidence. If you're like, oh gosh, that's going to be really heavy and I don't know if I can pick it up.
Pick it up? Yeah.
But you shouldn't need to do these confident boosting lifts. You should have the confidence in what you've programmed and what your coach has done for you, or that should be confidence enough. Like G's powerlifting lifts and Darcy's lifts, none of them. G did actually pull pretty heavy in her prep, but
yeah, she was
generally we don't.
In that last prep. Fuck.
Well, she went off program a couple of times, and I had to rein her back in, tell her calm fuck down. But it's like we will work off percentages, and it's like if you can do such 4 reps of this, technically, if everything goes right, you should be able to lift this, rather than just winging it or just needing that confidence boost. It's like, see it on the paper, it's been worked out. Like let's just go for this.
You see that at competitions. A lot of people are like, I just want to pick up the contest weight at the comp as a warm-up before they do it. I just want to feel it. Well, mate, that might be the only time you feel it, because you've just blown your whole fucking wad doing a warm-up pickup when
I have
you could just
seen
wait
that
till the
happen.
event. Happens
I've
all the
seen
time.
that happen. People have gotten their lift in warm-up and then gone out there and not gotten it. And it's like, you wasted it. What are you doing?
Insane. It means you've had little to no confidence or in your prep. You know what I mean? That's crazy to do that, because you've just blown maybe your only opportunity to hit those top numbers. Like, yeah, that's madness.
We see that in weightlifting as well, with people like always wanting to hit their competition lifts in training, like, a week out. And we're like, no, we're tapering for a reason. Like let us,
we should be dropping fatigue right now. It's like, but I could max out and see how it feels. It's like, whew, you have a point. Go destroy yourself, sir.
Well, oh gosh. Well, all my guys, if there's a max event and you've got your 3 attempts or whatever, even leading up, but depending on what happens on the day, it's like, I want your opener to be something you could get 2 to 3 reps of with the shittest setup on the shittest day when you feel the worst. I'm like, that's what your opener is, because you need to be on the board and it needs to feel good.
Right.
So there's none of this grinding on an opener. That doesn't happen. It's something that you will damn well fucking hit on your worst day. And then we move forward, and then we try and equal the gym PB, and then we try and get a new PB.
That's where I felt like I'd actually grown up at that last comp, because I had set 345 as my opener. Yeah, with the log with the deadlifts.
Oh, with the deadlift.
I hurt my hemi a little bit on the log, and I was like, fuck, I need to get on the board here, because I got Rongo right up my ass with points. And I'm like, I had 345 as an opener, which in hindsight I probably could have pulled for 8 fucking reps that day. But I dropped it back to 335 because I knew I probably could have pulled that for 8 reps, and tore that up. And I'm like, okay, cool, we're back on track. And then, that was like, okay, you finally fucking grew up, you wanker. So
I prefer the logic of just like, hey, why don't I just go for my max on the opener, but then I get 3 attempts at it. So that's like, it gives me extra chances of hitting it over time. So
you get points for failing the highest, right?
Your 4th attempt.
Oh yeah. You get points because it was close.
Stop it, Alana.
What?
Yeah, you get points for failing the highest, not who fucking actually gets the lift.
It's about the clout, and that's what you got to understand.
Yeah, I attempted a stupider number than you.
And that's, pretty much that's something I picked up on really early from my entire contest career, was only ever doing what I had to. Because I wanted the title, and records weren't overly a big thing back then, which is kind of a bummer, because I could have gone harder on some things. But only doing what I had to win. And I don't want to sound like a dick, but it's probably going to come off that way. There was very few competitions where I actually, towards the end of my career, after 2013, 14, 15, after 2015, excluding Arnold's, that I actually had to go hard out on. I only ever did what I had to win, because I didn't want the injury, and I didn't want to show off. So
there are a couple of
calculating everything.
Well, that Southern Hemisphere.
That's kind of where you want to be, numbers. Right? At the end of your career.
Well, yeah. That's funny. At Southern Hemispheres, there's 2 examples I can think of with that. So it was a max log we had there, was one of the events. And Alana, I think you finished on 97.5. And
it might have been 95. fun.
95.
It was up there. It was good.
And you were on fucking fire. And I'm like, you're literally going to retire without hitting a 100-kilo log in your fucking career. And you like, I was in your ear going, come on. And we weren't close like we are now. And I was like, fucking just do it. And you were like, nah, fuck it. I'm not being silly. And I'm like, it was very fucking intelligent.
Yeah, and I so wanted to, because that was like overheads for me were awful for a long time as well. And that took a lot of rebuilding and everything else. And so to be able to take the Australian record, which I did then at 95, and to be like, first Australian woman to crack 100. No, win the competition.
Yeah, and that's it. And titles are more important. And I think that's been a little bit lost with the whole record craziness in the last few years, is sort of taken away. And I hope we're going to sort of shift back the other way now, where people actually give a fuck about titles. And the biggest example of that I can think of is back in was it 2017 when Eddie pulled the 500 deadlift?
Yes.
That wasn't known as the Deadlift World Championships then. That was Europe's Strongest Man. Does anybody remember who won that year? I do. It was Lawrence.
I didn't know it was a competition. I thought it was a deadlift exhibition.
I've only seen the YouTube video
exactly.
over and over again, really.
Exactly. And it was Lawrence Charlet won that year, and he beat Thor, and he beat Eddie Hall, and he beat an absolutely stellar lineup of athletes. That was probably the best Loz ever turned up, and he's an absolute legend of the sport. And all the fanfare was surrounding Eddie Hall's single lift record. Eddie didn't even do the rest of the fucking comp after that. He pulled out because and that was a criticism I have of his career, was he was a real record chaser and he wouldn't do a lot of full comps. He'd pull out after he got whatever fucking lift he wanted to do. But Loz was in lifetime form, took some really big scalps that day, and nobody can fucking remember who won Europe's Strongest Man that year, which is second only behind World's Strongest Man Europe's. And it shits me, and it's a terrible trend. And I'm hoping now, after this recent bullshit in Australia and elsewhere with the record crap, which I don't want to go into, that we're actually going to shift back towards people.
Why not? We could go into that.
We're going to end up with a
I do have
a podcast.
I do have a comment about that though, because there was also someone else that was close to hitting that 500 that day as well, right?
There were two guys. There was Benny Magnuson from Iceland.
Benny had to be Benny.
And Jerry Pritchett. So do you want me to outlay what I know about what happened there?
Yeah, because I believe the timing like just made them have no chance, right?
The first thing you have to understand is that Eddie Hall's actually a business partner of Colin Bryce and Darren Sadler, who run Giants Love and World's Strongest Man. So there's a conflict there to begin with, but that's a whole other aside. But when they did it, the whole thing was scripted that Eddie was going to be the guy that broke the 500. They flew Jerry Pritchett over from the States to do it as well, who at that time, he'll never hit that again, even though he can probably still hit 1,000 pounds, which he has. But he's getting on now. But that was his one chance that day, and he's adamant that he would have pulled it. And also Benny Magnuson, one of the greatest deadlifters in powerlifting and strongman. In fact, still the only guy to pull a completely raw belt-only 1,000-pound deadlift, as far as I understand. I think he pulled 1,015. And
the biggest calves in the game. He's got to have the biggest calves in the game. Yeah,
bigger than my
very thick
torso. They're insane. But yeah, so what happened was Eddie went first. He pulled the 500, and then there was 45 minutes of TV interviews and fanfare and all this bullshit. Meanwhile, you got Benny and Jerry sitting out back, who have already pulled up to, I think, 1,000 at that point, were supposed to go next, and they're just sitting there getting stone cold. So they actually, a lot of people don't realize, they actually did get to come out and make their attempts. Benny broke it off the floor. I think he did a reasonable pull on it, didn't get the pull. And Jerry Pritchett came out, tore his hamstring straight off. And he was fucking filthy on it, from what I understand, which makes sense completely. But they weren't given a fair fucking shake at that. And that was crap, because it was a whole fucking narrative. And then, like I said, nobody remembers who then went on and won the actual bloody competition, which is way more impressive than a fucking deadlift as far as I'm concerned, especially in strongman, for fuck's sake. It's not powerlifting. So anyway, that's the story there. So that was wrong. And the pursuit of records is a fucking, it's great and all. It's great to have records. I have records, but like, it's certainly not my focus. It's certainly not now either.
I think it doesn't really work with strongman either. I think it's the whole point of strongman is an event and multiple events that you train for, right? That's the point. It's multiple events, different modalities, and you accumulate the points, and who's the best overall wins. Yeah. So records aren't congruent with the whole point of strongman. It's like no one gives a fuck. Let's just compare it to CrossFit, because that's the closest thing to strongman, really, as a separate sport. Is like no one gives a fuck who's got the best clean and jerk
or the best Murph time.
Or best Murph time. It's who won the CrossFit Games. That's what matters.
Yeah.
So I think like the record chasing makes sense because it's like the clout chasing, but also it doesn't really work with strongman, especially because it's not, I'm not going to call it the record's not legitimate, but like you have so many records to break that you can have 45 records, 100 records.
It's not just
strongman.
snatch, clean and jerk or squat, bench, deadlift.
It's funny though, because powerlifting went through the same thing about 8 to 10
It did.
years ago.
Federations.
They
World
went
champs.
crazy. They went crazy.
We got world
with all
champs.
this fucking, yep.
I'm a world champion.
Records.
But there's 6 people in it. It's only people named Ashley Jones, under 27 in my area, and I'm actually world champ. How good's that?
Yeah, right. So that's the whole thing with weight.
That's my federation.
It broke it down too far, too many federations, and they went through it. Everyone was trying to break world records too much, and
I think
sort of took the focus off winning actual fucking titles. It was ridiculous.
I think you could have like 3 records in strongman, and that's all. Well, 3 or 4 records or something that people care about, and then everything else is titles. Like you could go like deadlift.
I'm going to go with
specific.
like you could probably have 6 records
Yeah.
that people care about, but just coming from a
There's
I think
there's things going on in backplay that'll be revealed soon enough.
I think the
That's what
records.
Alana's referring to.
Yeah.
I think I like having records because that gives you like a standard or a baseline for athletes coming up to chase. Yeah, it's just a benchmark.
Yeah.
But I do see that this chasing of records is also a reflection of the time we're in, where we're not actually getting to do full shows anyway.
Yeah.
So like
So it's
the
gym
top
lift.
guys need something to work on. Hey, let's chase a big deadlift because that's the only thing I can currently do, and maybe I can get some funding to do that or whatever.
Look, that's true enough, but I think it's a symptom more of the Instagram age as well, Andy. I think it's more people love being able to post a big single lift or a big because people have about 30 seconds of fucking attention, if that. So I think if you can blast something onto Instagram and social media about a record, I think people respond sort of better to that these days.
It might be also the accessibility of these lifts. So like World Strongest Man is a TV show. So the event happens and you're like, oh, I've heard who won. So I guess I'll wait a couple of months until I can watch it. And how many people are already over it by that time that happens? Arnold happens. How many times do you get to just tune in and watch it? It's not really like, it's cool sometimes, but it's not like a event that you can watch. Like CrossFit Games, you're just like, okay, YouTube, I'll watch it. Or like these events, you can watch it. But like Instagram, I just follow the guy and it's going to come up. It comes up on King of the Lifts or like some other channel. Like it's the accessibility as well.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that's a whole other fucking chat, which we could probably do in part 2 or something. But how CrossFit is kicking our ass at even just the way they present and televise or make their events accessible. Like some of the Arnold World Series are put up live and things like that. But World's Strongest Man, like you said, is still a television show. You can't see it in real time. Fans are over it by the time it comes out because everyone knows the fucking results. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually watched World's Strongest Man. Probably like 2014. I barely watch our own fucking sport.
You watch the highlights on YouTube.
Yeah, I see a couple of things on Instagram myself and go, yep, sweet, I know what the fuck's going on, don't care, keep going. Like, it's hilarious when even the people doing the sport aren't watching their own fucking sport. Like, how can we expect other people to want to watch it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what the girls have done in the Strong Woman series on ABC, I don't know if you guys have sat down and watched that.
No, is it good?
I actually really
I'm aware
enjoyed
of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It just shows a different side to being like a strong woman, and everyone has their own battles and whatnot. But I think it's definitely going to be more relatable to
real people,
the people real people that we want to bring into the sport. And
so that's a good
they
point
don't
there,
all
Alana.
have to be huge and
well, that's a good point. Where can people access that? Like, where was that televised? Well,
I find it on. It's not on Netflix, but it was on my smart TV. But I shared it as well. And I can share it again on my Facebook page and Instagram and stuff like that, the links to the ABC Strong Woman series. But no, it's just cool. And it's cool to see some old faces like Lee Holland-Keynes, a big character in that.
Yep.
So, it's good. And I think there's a few clips of G in there. And it was a good watch. So I don't know if there's more coming or not.
It's sort of like what we talked about.
Getting things like that out there.
It's sort of like what we talked about the other day, Andy, with having the story when we were talking with Deb last week with the Olympics, but having that story told about the athletes, not just this is the lifts they do. It's like, what's the real person behind this?
Yes.
Who are these characters? You know,
Yeah, what are
tell
the
the story.
struggles? What led them to this point? Like kind of like what we're
Yeah.
doing today, where we're talking to Alana. We found out how she got into the sport, some of the injuries she's had, how she came back, then how she left again, then how she became a mentor to other athletes. Like that's
And we can do part 3 of Alana's struggles. That could be a whole series.
And then we can talk about her transition back into weightlifting and so on and so forth.
Andy watched some of your videos a little while back, Alana, and he's like, "Has Alana ever done any weightlifting?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "She's over there doing like 100 kilos on a fucking clean and jerk or some shit on the axle." I'm like, "All right, I'll tell her she needs to come do some weightlifting."
She just needs to do some super total. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool actually. Super total. Powerlifting. So powerlifting and Ollie combined.
Oh, okay.
So you do.
So just like
that sounds fun.
Snatch, clean and jerk,
squat, bench, dead.
I mean, maybe if I get bored.
Well, I mean, like obviously you got to focus on what you're doing at the moment. We don't want to
do it now.
We don't want to get rid of that V taper. Like just start adding all these compound lifts, and she's just like
taking me a long time.
Awesome.
Cool. So maybe that's a good place to leave off.
Yeah.
Alana, where can people find you and follow you and reach out to you?
Oh, okay. Probably just my Instagram. So Lana Lady Lifter. That's always a good one. You can find me on Facebook too. I think I've got Strongwoman Alana Curnow on there. Or you can just, don't add me actually, because I don't add people on Facebook anymore. Just follow me on Instagram.
I don't even use Facebook anymore except for fucking like private groups for Raw. But that's it.
I got so many ads there. I think I had like 800 or something, and I was like, I'm not even going to go through it.
Maybe best to just not give it out. Just give you Instagram.
Just give the Instagram.
Just follow me on Instagram, and then I don't have to respond. I don't have to reprove anything. You can just follow me.
Awesome. Guys, you can find Raw Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Make sure you check out our YouTube movement library that's come out this week. We're really excited to show that off to the world. Probably the biggest movement library for all weightlifting, strongman, and powerlifting movements anywhere. I don't think anyone's done all of them. So that's really cool. Buy a hoodie, and you can follow Luke at Luke_Blue Mountain_Reynolds on Instagram, Ash at Ash Jones _NSS on Instagram, and you can follow me at Train with Andy. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.
Peace.